This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books, and I've been covering Disney very closely these last several months. The Disney disaster where they destroyed all of the franchises except for their princess brands. Nothing wrong with Frozen. It is as you expected it to be, but everything else has basically been forced to become a princess brand. This is a very insightful article from Bounding Into Comics, one of my favorite websites, covering a video from Paul Chato who explains how Disney's princess culture destroyed Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar. I've looked at this. I've reviewed the video. I'm 99% along with Paul Chato, and I do have some additional insight, and I'm looking forward to giving it to you. Let's get into this article. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Former CBC television executive Paul Chato explains how Disney's princess culture has destroyed Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar. And basically what he explains, I'm going to get you right up front, is that Disney has a princess culture. They were always known for being a girl-focused property. The Disney princess was really a lot of what Disney was always about. And while they had different cultures when they acquired Marvel, they wanted the boys franchise. They acquired Pixar, that was its own thing. They acquired Lucasfilm, of course, that was its own thing. But eventually, because of the weakness of Disney's management, and I've said this many times myself, that Bob Iger is a great deal maker. You just can't say he's not a good deal maker. He is a good deal maker. He got these franchises. Warner Brothers didn't. Universal didn't. He grabbed these classic franchises. He got all of them at a decent price, but he managed them terribly. And making a deal is not the same thing as managing a business. In a recent YouTube upload to his Call Me Chato channel, Chato opens his video saying, "I want to tell you all why Disney's has cratered all the pop culture powerhouses that they've purchased and bitten off more than they could chew. It's not an incompetence story as much as others have opined, although, of course, that does enter into it. It's actually a mergers and acquisitions story." That's a little bit of a fallacy, because when you have management and you do a merger, you buy a company, you buy a new division from another company, that is a management story, and that is a competence story. It's not the same thing as managing the business day to day, but it is important, and it is considered a function of management to be able to digest and incorporate in a new division if you're going to go ahead and acquire it. It is a poor management issue. If you can't manage an acquisition, you shouldn't be buying an acquisition. First, Chato explains that there's no significant difference between companies like the Walt Disney Company and steel foundries. He says, quote, "I keep trying to tell all of you that's just because we're dealing with corporations whose output is movies, TV, comic books, etc., what we categorize as creative products, that they're somehow different from a steel foundry. They are not. When Michael Eisner became the president of Disney, all those old movies sitting collecting dust were no different from a warehouse full of unsold ribbon steel rusting." Chato goes on to list off a number of reasons why a company would purchase another company, but notes when it's purchased the company that the challenge that every company has is a different culture. And if you've ever worked for HR, you know that their favorite saying is that culture eats strategy. Now, culture eats strategy just simply means this. If you've got a plan, you need to get everyone on board for whatever that plan is. If you don't have a plan and you bring everyone on board, which is pretty much what Bob Iger did, there is no incorporating everyone else. Bob Iger's plan was to do what he did with Pixar. Acquire Pixar, let it do its own thing. Acquire Lucasfilm, let it do its own thing. Acquire Marvel, let it do its own thing. They did come with management to some degree, especially at Pixar. So much so, and you have to remember this, Disney's animation department was managed into the ground. Eisner screwed it up. He couldn't produce good animation. Part of the justification to acquire Pixar, that they were going to save Disney animation. And that actually worked out as long as they kept John Lasseter, which of course over time they decided, let's get rid of John Lasseter. And now you see the state of where Pixar and its franchises are. Disney's management is so bad that they forget that they have Ice Age, which is a pretty good franchise that if they did a nice job with could be another Minions potentially, or at least half of Minions, which is still good business. Chato goes on to list a number of reasons. Quote, "Internally, you could recognize major problems in the existing corporate culture will defeat any of your attempts to change things for the better," Chato then asks. So how much worse does that get when trying to incorporate that foreign organism into what you've just bought? He then turns his attention to the Walt Disney Company. In the case of Disney, management rightfully recognized that while their princess brand was very successful, it could only get them so far. So let's buy some boy brands. Now that's true. But what Bob Iger was really attracted to, because remember, Bob Iger came into the company through Eisner's ABC acquisition. Bob Iger saw the financial success of the ABC transaction was phenomenal for Disney. They did very well. It was a great deal for Disney. It was a good deal for ABC. But when Eisner bought ABC and merged it into Disney, it became Eisner's Disney. And you know from Bob Iger's ego, he wanted to make Disney his own. And the way he was going to do that was through these massive acquisitions. You acquire the company, you change the nature of the company, and now because you acquired it, you're the hero, you're the new Walt Disney. In fact, Bob Iger in his Time article talks about how, well, you know, I've been working with the company for half of its existence because Disney's been around for 100 years and Bob Iger has been working for Disney or its predecessor division ABC for 50 years. However, he notes the princess culture of Disney could not leave the boy cultures of Star Wars and Marvel alone. The force was female, we found out. Shifting his attention specifically to Star Wars and Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, Chato notes, many of you might argue that Kathleen the usurper Kennedy came as part of the Lucasfilm package, and she did. George Lucas installed her himself, but he's going to tell you and just say basically, look, it wouldn't have mattered if Michael Bay was in charge. The culture crabgrass of Disney would have eventually overtaken the Lucasfilm structure. Now, that could be true, except, you know, Kennedy, we know she said recently, look, when she came into Disney to run Lucasfilm, she went and made sure that she had like some huge percentage of female executives that obviously thought the same way that she thought. She really remade Lucasfilm so that their executive input would be essentially all yes men, or better to be said, yes women, to just agree with her. I don't know if Michael Bay would have done that same thing. If Michael Bay would have put Michael Bay clones in those positions, I think we probably would have had a different Star Wars. He went on to point out The Force Awakens, and you just have to look at the output of Disney's acquisitions, not requiring even a semblance of the hero's journey. And of course, the wretched trilogy. What is the hero's journey? You should know this. Okay, so here's what this is. Why the hero's journey is important. The hero's journey demonstrates that change is possible for everyone. It shows us that an ordinary person can overcome great adversity and defeat their enemies or fears. With some help, they can affect the world in some way. It's also important as it explains how popular stories and myths work. The purpose of the hero's journey is a framework for crafting a compelling story. It starts the heroic journey of an ordinary person or main character to become a hero. It's used in many popular mythical stories like Star Wars and Toy Story. That's why movies like Star Wars are so inspiring, because they relate to us on a basic level, because we're all ordinary. We certainly start as ordinary. So if we allow ourselves to go out into the world, take on challenges, get help from other people, that's where the mentor comes in, we can go and do great things in the world and improve ourselves and contribute to our community. That's what the hero's journey is about. And that's why it's good for everybody to know about it, especially if you're a writer, but it's just good to know in general. Chato also touched on Marvel. In the case of Marvel, we thought we had an ally in Kevin Feige, but the princess culture shrunk whatever testicles Feige had. Then we have the emasculation of the male superheroes of the Marvel universe, he said. It wasn't enough to replace them with female photocopies, but they had to be demeaned and ridiculed at every appearance and often kicked in the crotch. Chato goes on to point to the upcoming The Marvels film and Lucasfilm's newest season of Star Wars Visions, Bo-Katan replacing Din Djarin in Mandalorian, and Ahsoka's trailer appearing to feature only female heroines and male villains. Interestingly, Chato then notes it's not just Disney princess culture, but that culture has been reshaped by a "we don't need no men" ideology. He states, ironically, that "we don't need no men" ideology that has taken over Disney doesn't seem to be able to help their own princess brand either. Rather than giving audiences what they want with perhaps a few twists, we have a Disney that is lecturing its audience. This is the fault of leadership. To this point, Bob Iger made it abundantly clear that the radical left-wing ideologies such as gender and sexual identity would remain paramount at the company when he returned as CEO last year. Now, thanks to the geniuses at Cosmic Book News, which is pretty much Matt McLoin, I came across this great article again that I had forgotten about from the Cobra Kai co-creator who reveals his rules for successfully rebooting classic IP franchises. This guy who runs Cobra Kai's franchise could be running Disney, Marvel, Lucasfilm, Pixar, all of it, and these rules are fantastic. They're right on point. Let's go through them real quick. Do treat the original franchise with reverence. Just as you should honor the father and mother, so should you honor the franchise you are bringing back. Remember, your show would not exist without the original movie. This is not just IP, this is something precious to millions of people. Treat it that way. Don't be afraid to make big changes. Respecting the material doesn't mean that you can't be original. Fans don't want to see the same thing they've seen before. Karate Kid fans love Cobra Kai because we took the bully John Lawrence, from the original movie and made him the underdog of our story. Do create new characters to enrich your story and reach younger viewers. It's true that if you want to attract a younger audience, it helps to have a younger cast. New characters can bring fresh energy and perspective to your franchise, but don't forget about the original characters or your older audience. Sure, you want to lure younger viewers, but you first need to win over the hardcore fans who made your franchise a success. Do use nostalgia to draw your audience into the story. Classic movies like The Karate Kid have been rewatched on VHS and DVD and cable so many times that people remember certain lines and scenes more vividly than their own childhood memories. Calling back these moments can have a huge emotional impact. Don't rely on nostalgia. Callbacks can bring back memories, but they don't tell a story. Even hardcore fans will tune out if they aren't hooked into a compelling plot with great characters. The key is using nostalgia to create something new and exciting. Do ask yourself, why now? You will be asked this question many times in the greenlighting process when you're pitching the project, so you might want to have an answer. For Cobra Kai, our answer was that bullying is more relevant today than ever, and we wanted to explore that topic by re-examining Johnny, one of the most iconic bullies in movie history. Don't overthink the why now. There's a reason your franchise is a classic. Most likely it taps into something universal and timeless. So while it helps to give your story some social relevance, you also want it to be relevant 20 years from now. Focus on the classic themes that will stand the test of time. That's what's truly inclusive from the real word inclusive, not the new progressive version of the word inclusive, which really means exclusive. Do respect, encourage, and engage your fandom. The best part about working on a famous franchise is that there's a built-in fan base already. Do what you can to turn that fan base into a community. Get them hyped up, show them you listen, and encourage their creativity and passion. Don't argue with the fans. There's nothing more futile than trying to convince fans who didn't like something that they are wrong. If there is a division in the fan base, let the fans argue amongst themselves. That is part of the fun. What an incredible article. I would put this guy at the head of Disney's franchises, and within a year or 2 years, he'd turn everything around and throw at least $100 billion in value on top of the company. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Do you think it's the poor management of Bob Iger? Again, he did negotiate these deals. He got a hold of these franchises. Fox would have loved to buy Lucasfilm. They would have loved to buy Marvel. Bob Iger figured out a way to swindle them and get these franchises, but do you think it's his poor management that's caused this to happen? And do you think it's the princess concept, that momentum at the company where, yes, Disney's big thing was Disney's princesses. No one else even had princesses. As Marvel had superheroes, as Star Wars had this like sci-fi action adventure, Disney had princesses. Do you think that's what really helped destroy the management of these brands, that eventually it had to take over the core of these brands? But definitely let me know what you think in the comments below. I really appreciate your comments. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.